In this video, I will talk about humanistic learning theory, but I thought I would start here. At Malmö University, we have several restaurants and cafes in the university buildings. Working in any of these buildings is undeniably convenient for both employees and students. You could always get a coffee wherever you are. But what we don't always think about is that these facilities are absolutely necessary for learning to take place. And this was arguably Abraham Maslow's insight. He is an influential figure in what has been described as humanistic psychology, a branch of psychology that opposed the overtly narrow view of humans in behaviorism, in which human action tended to be reduced to the consequences of heredity, environment, and stimuli. It also went against psychoanalysis, which emphasized that internal, unconscious mental conditions control humans. Instead, humanistic psychology emphasizes that people can make their own decisions. The self can challenge what is imposed from the outside and go against its internal drives. Humans are not robots. Although humans have this innate capacity of choice and ability to change, Maslow's insight was that humans also have a hierarchy of needs. For a person to fulfill their potential, these needs must be met in order, as he reasoned that it was difficult to satisfy a higher need in the hierarchy unless the lower ones were already met. The first four needs he mentioned were deficit needs, among which he included psychological needs, need for security, love and belonging, and esteem. So not psychological, physiological needs, of course. So the physiological needs are the basic human needs for food, water, warmth, and so on. Security was about feeling safe from various dangers. Love and belonging then relate to our need for relationships and community, and esteem is about having self-confidence and feeling competent and respected. According to Maslow, these needs must be satisfied in this order. Thus, if you are not secure, it is difficult to create meaningful relationships with someone. If these deficit needs are not satisfied, Maslow believed that a person could not advance to other human needs. Uh, you will thus have to be governed by, you will then be governed by the environment or the unconscious mental conditions of which which you are part of, and will thus have few opportunities for self-actualization. But once these needs are met, the so-called extended hierarchy of needs may come into play. And the first of these are cognitive needs, where we seek information, understanding, and express curiosity. This is thus a need to learn. Thus, if we accept Maslow's reasoning, school meals become an important issue. That is, how can you expect someone to learn if they go hungry at the same time? This is also true in higher education, which is one reason why restaurants and cafes are an important condition for learning to take place at Malmö University. But it is also a relevant question of how universities and other higher education institutions create security, how to create opportunities for the formation of social relations, which is relevant to students who do not have social context when they arrive in a new place of study. And for teachers also, it becomes relevant, among other things, to contribute to the students' self-confidence by confirming that the students have the ability to be part of the education and be respected. By contributing to the satisfaction of these deficit needs, universities and other higher education institutions can thus contribute to student learning. At the same time, Maslow emphasized that humans have other needs after the cognitive ones that are also important for higher education. The need that comes after the cognitive is the aesthetic need. This need is about being able to see the beauty around you. It is thus a basic form of appreciation of the world that surrounds you. However, the need that comes after that is of greater interest to us today, a need for self-actualization. Here we start to get to the core of humanistic learning theory. It argues that human beings are fundamentally interested in development and that this can also be seen as the ultimate goal of being human, at least if you ask Maslow. According to him, self-actualization was about a need to become everything that one is capable of becoming. That is, it is a need that is satisfied when one is able to fully utilize one's talents and interest. Thus, according to Maslow, a characteristic of successful people admired for their success is that they have satisfied this need. These are people who are good at solving problems, can examine the world around them critically and creatively, and are not bound by social conventions. I can briefly mention that Maslow later in his career saw transcendence as the highest form of need. This is a deeply spiritual need that he identified, and I think this may have implications for understanding the role of higher education, but it is such a broad topic that I can't go into it in this video. Nevertheless, whether Maslow's hierarchy is reasonable, that is actually debatable. It seems somewhat reasonable to think that humans have all of these needs, but is it really the case that these needs are always satisfied in a certain order? Is it not the case that people often move back and forth on this list, even jumping between different needs? I might be hungry, but I can still use my cognitive abilities, just to mention one example. But having said that, Maslow highlighted that human beings have certain needs that influence each other, with one unfulfilled need affecting the satisfaction of another need. Accordingly, if I am hungry, I learn. Don't have the same ability to learn. What I want you to take away is that Maslow believed self-actualization was a need all humans possessed and an expression of realizing that their potential as individuals. For this to happen, however, all needs in the hierarchy of needs must be met, which poses challenges for teachers and higher education institutions. But it also puts student-centered perspectives on learning, which is something that scholars within the humanistic learning theory tradition have highlighted. Here, I can especially mention the psychologist Carl Rogers, who was influential in developing the humanistic learning theory in this direction. Nevertheless, if you like, you can think of the humanistic learning theory tradition as conceiving of human life as a journey towards self-actualization. What this means will vary. Although the needs are similar, they will be expressed and satisfied in different ways depending on our individual context and particular interests. In any case, the main idea is that it is not up to the teacher and higher education institutions to determine what good self-actualization looks like. The student has the ability to decide what it should look like and how it should be done. What higher education can do, however, is to create the right conditions for learning to take place. Based on a humanistic learning theory, some learning practices has therefore been developed that aim to address the needs of students and make them the focus of the learning situation. This includes an emphasis on student choice, where students are given control over the learning and focus on what leads to their self-actualization. Engagement and self-motivation are also important, where efforts are made to inspire students to become curious inquirers. Self-evaluation is also important, as grades are not what determine whether the student has, only thing that determines whether a student has succeeded, but how far they have come on their path towards self-actualization is equally important. A self-learning environment is also emphasized, as it is taught that students need to feel physical, mental, and emotional safety in order to learn. A final aspect that can be mentioned is that humanistic learning theory emphasizes that emotions and knowledge are interconnected, which means that one thinks of the students more holistically, meaning as a person with varying needs and emotions, and not just as a person who needs to acquire knowledge. So, that was a small introduction to humanistic learning theory. I hope this video has been helpful. Take care.